Hi boys and girls, this week we're going to focus on Guess the Number app, and the purpose of this app really is to have a number between 1 and 100 generated in the background, and the user needs to guess the correct number. If it's higher, lower, or if it's correct, appropriate feedback will be output. In order to complete these tasks, or complete this app rather, you need to complete the following tasks. First of all is to create an interface, which is on the left here. An interface is quite simple. We have a label at the top. We have a text field. Inside the text field, we have some placeholder text. We also have another label here, which is going to output the correct message, whether it's correct or incorrect, or if it's higher or lower, just some feedback. And then we have a button here, which is going to contain the logic for the entire app to check if the number is higher or lower. So that's the interface. Number two, I've already provided you with some code, which we'll need to adapt. Number three, configure the outlets and the action using the assistant editor. Now, if you recall, the outlets are used to access the properties of an object. So for example, if we want to access the properties of this text field, which includes the text value that's input, that is something that we need to do using an outlet. An action essentially allows us to do something with the object, interact with the object. In this case, this is a button. We click on the button and we want it to do something, which in this case is to check to see if the value is higher, lower, or if it's correct, or if it's the same as the number that's being generated. Number four, one of the things, again, to make this app more usable, we want to clear the text field on each answer attempt. And then number five, what we want to do as well in the label here, rather than just saying number is too high or number is too low, what we want to do is we actually want to include the number that's been input here. So if we include 27 here, it should say 27 is too low, input a higher number. Okay, so those are the completion tasks for this app. We also have some optional extension tasks here for those of you that manage to finish ahead of time and want to push yourselves, and you can refer to these optional extension tasks, and you can actually ask me if you have any questions regarding these. But for now, we're going to just complete these basic completion tasks. So I'm going to switch over to Xcode here, and you can see here that I've developed my interface. Again, it's quite simple. We have a label, text field. You can see here, rather than putting numbers in here, I've just put a message, which is please enter a number between 1 and 100. That's the placeholder text, and then we also have an output label and a button here. And I've gone ahead and I've clicked on this link here to copy this code here. This is the code that I've provided you for this project, for this little app, and I've pasted it inside here. Now, some of you kind of have this issue here where you delete all of this text, and then you maybe you're kind of here and you've deleted the entire contents of the class file, and now the Xcode does not really know which storyboard to associate with which class. So you may kind of do this, and you may kind of just do this here. You may put in the text here, and then you may kind of go back to the storyboard, and it may say here that assistant editor is not available, or something to that effect. All you need to do is just hit the Command B button, which is for build. Command B, after you've pasted in the actual contents of the class file, Command B, just to rebuild the project, and you should be able to see this content side by side. Remember that in order to see the content side by side, you need to click on the storyboard, then you need to click on, I'm just going to show you here. So this is the storyboard here, and then you need to click on this button here, which kind of looks like the left align button here, and then you click on assistant, and that will show you the assistant editor together with your code and your view. If you want to make some space for yourselves, you can just kind of hide different parts of the screen here. Okay, so again, I'm quite happy with that. Next thing I want to do is I want to connect these elements up, right? In order for me to work with this app, I need to connect these elements to the code. So there's a number of elements that we need to connect. First of all, there's this text field here, right? Okay, you can see here, I've already created an outlet for you here in the code, and I'm just going to connect this here to here. The next one is the response label. Now, this is the response label because this is going to be giving us feedback. So I'm going to connect this as well here to here. And then finally, there's the button. The button contains a lot of logic here, right? And we're going to go through this right now. So I'm just going to connect this to the button here. Now, for some reason, sometimes people make a mistake and they may connect the button or the label up to the wrong object. If you hold down your control key and click on this button here, you can actually see all of the connections that are bound to this storyboard here. You can actually see them. You can see it actually highlight up here as well. If I just hover over these, you can actually see. So if it's a problem, if it's incorrect, all you need to do is click on this little X here, and now that connection is not bound to this button, and you can actually go ahead and reconnect it and rebind it. Okay, so that's that done. Now let's just go through this code here. The first couple of lines essentially here are the outlets that I've created because we want to access the properties, the text properties of this text field and the text property of this label as well. We have a variable. Again, this is all in camel case. Everything here is in camel case. A variable called correct answer, which is set to 0 initially. We have another variable here called submitted answer, which is also set to 0. And then we have a variable called random number. And this is a special kind of feature of Swift here. You can actually see here that I've assigned it an integer, int, of a random value between 1 and 100. This is how you should read this code. Okay, so it's essentially create a variable called random number with a random value. It's an integer of random value between 1 and 100. Then in my action, you can see here, if I just hover over that, I have the first line, which is line 15, submitted answer equals int input text field dot text. Now, one of the things that you need to remember about text fields is the data type. The type of data that a text field holds is of type text, or of type string rather. Okay, so a text field will hold a value which is of type string, so which is essentially a text value. So you can see here that I've got this thing here called int. I've got this keyword here called int. This is called casting. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm casting the value of this text field to an integer, meaning I'm saying that take the value of this text field. Obviously, we need to assume that numbers are going to be put in here. It's a whole different ball game if we have letters put in here because it will crash the app. Also, if you don't put in a value inside the text field, it will also crash the app as well. Okay, we haven't implemented that level of logic in the app. Again, it's just a simple example to show you how you can work with conditional statements to check things. So what this is doing is it's just essentially it's saying the submitted answer, which is set to 0 to begin with. When the button is clicked, the submitted answer is going to be whatever answer is put into the text field. Okay, and then we have a value here which is called correct answer, and we've assigned it the value of 3. Now this may not be correct. Okay, it may not be correct. Let's just take a look at the rest of the code here. Then we have an if statement here, which is if input text field dot text is equal to. Notice that a double equals and a single equals are different. A double equals essentially implies equal to. If something is equal to something, whereas a single equals means assign this value to a specific variable. So a equals to 5, for example. So that means assign the value of 5 to the variable a. So we have an if statement here, a conditional statement here, which kind of implies that if this text field is empty, if there's no value, right, you need to, there's a kind of output. Now, this essentially, if you take a look at this code here, line 18 to 20, you're going to be surprised that this doesn't work because there's also something else that we need to consider, which is nil values, which is outside the scope of this project. But let's just move on anyway and go on to line number 22 because this is where all of the check is happening. Providing that you enter a valid number, the app shouldn't crash. Okay, so providing that you enter a valid number, if the answer that you've submitted, okay, whatever answer you've submitted is less than the correct answer. Now recall the correct answer according to here is 3. Now that's not correct. Okay, that's not correct. So we need to change this. The correct answer essentially is a random number. Okay, the correct answer is a random number. So we're going to say random number here. and Swift automatically completes this for us. So if we say here that if the submitted answer is less than the correct answer, then the response label, which is this label here, should say enter a higher number. Else, if the submitted answer is greater than the correct answer, which is this arrow here, that's the greater than arrow here, then the response label dot text, the text property of this label should say enter a lower number. Else, because there's no other condition, either it's lower or higher or it's correct, final statement is the else statement, the response label dot text should say correct, well done, and then there's an emoji here as well. Okay, and that's essentially, and then we have a bracket here to close off this entire function for the button. Okay, so that essentially is our app logic for our app. And again, these little errors, these little kind of logic errors that I've introduced is something that you need to be able to read the code, and you need to be able to kind of see what is happening at each stage on each line. Okay, that was a purposeful error over here, and I would kind of assume that many of you would not pick this up initially. Okay, so you can see here now that is correct. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly build this and run this. And again, a reminder that when you're opening up the simulator for the first time, it may take a long time for it to load. Please do not quit the simulator every time you make a minor change to your app, because it will take time to open up again. So you can see here that it's asking me to put in a number. So I'm going to put in 44, check answer, and it's saying enter a lower number. So I'm just going to put in 33, a lower number. You can see here that this app is not really usable because I have to make sure that I go back into the text field and delete the text. So that's something that we need to fix. 20, enter a lower number. 10, a lower number than 10. 5, 2. Okay, so it's higher than 2 and less than 5. So let's just put 3. Let's just see what happens. 3, it's not 3. Then it's going to be 4. Okay, so you can see here that the logic-wise, the app actually works, but it's not really entirely usable at the moment because I always have to delete this number. So what we can do here, if I'm just going to click on stop here, just to disconnect the code from the simulator, and what I'm going to do is after each click of the button, it's going to go through the logic, right? It will go through all of the logic here, and right at the end, after each click of the button, I'm going to delete the contents of the text field. So I'm just going to say input text field dot text equals, okay, an empty string. Now, some of you may kind of be thinking, well, why have I not put this in after each if statement here and here and here? Well, I could have done that, but one of the things as a programmer that you need to do is to really reduce duplication. You don't want to duplicate code. You want to minimize any duplication, because the more code that is duplicated, the more chances of errors, the more chance of the more requirements of maintenance or maintaining your code, and it's going to be a bigger job for you. So again, we need to be smart about this, right? We only need essentially a one statement here to clear the text field. So I'm just going to run this again, and it should load up pretty quickly. Okay, it's loading up now. Okay, so here it is. Just put in the value here. So I'm just going to put in 50, and if I press and check answer, it clears the text field, which is great. Enter a lower number, so I'm just going to enter 20. Okay, lower than 20, 10, higher than 10, 15. Okay, so maybe 13. Okay, and if we go back to the project guide, let's just see if there's anything else that needs doing here. So what we've done is we've created the interface. We've copied and pasted the code into our viewcontrol.swift file. We've configured the outlets and the action. We've cleared the text field. This is something that we've just done now. We've cleared the text field in each answer attempt. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to modify the output label to include the answer. Okay, the answer that's put in. Because right now it just says, if you go back to here, right now it just basically says enter a high number or enter a low number. it doesn't really kind of say, give us an indication of what value we entered. And if we do that, it's going to make it a more usable app. Okay, so the kind of message we want to hear is 27 is too low, input a higher number. So what we want to do here is we want to go back to our Xcode here, and what we want to do here is if the number is too low, we want to actually put in the value here. Now the process we want to use is called string interpolation. We want to interpolate the value that's been entered into the text field and put it inside our string. So what we want to do here is there's a special format for this, and we need to kind of do something like this here, and we need to say the value that we're taking, remember, is from the is submitted answer, right? Is the submitted answer here, right? So what we can do is we can say, let's just see if this works here, submitted answer. Okay, submitted answer is too low, enter a higher number. Okay, so 27 is too low, input a higher number. Okay, enter a higher number or input a higher number, doesn't really make a difference. Then what we want to do is we want to copy this again here. Let's paste it here. Submitted answer is too high. Remember that this is greater than, right? So if the number that's been entered is too high, it's too high, enter a lower number. So this part here, this if statement here checks to see, remember, it's less than, this arrow here is less than, so if the number is less than the correct answer, meaning it's too low, enter a high number. This one is greater than, means if the number that's been input is too high, you need to enter a lower number. Okay, and here maybe what we can put in here as well is submitted answer is correct. Okay, now submitted answer is essentially this answer that's been submitted by the user in the text field, right? We've said here submitted answer is equal to the value of the text field. Now let's just try running this. What we may need to do, however, is maybe stretch this label out here a little bit just to accommodate the text. Okay, here. I'm going to try running this right now. Make sure that you are running it in the iPhone 11 when you run the app here. Make sure you choose the correct simulator, otherwise the layout is not going to be too consistent with your storyboard. Okay, so what we should be expecting when this loads up is whenever we put in a number here, it should indicate now the number within this label here, which is, as you can see here now, the number is being incorporated. It's more usable now. It gives really appropriate feedback. So it's saying 40 is too low. It's clear the text field, enter a higher number. So 50 is too low. 70 is too low. 90 is too high. So maybe 80 is too low. 85 is too low. 87, excellent. And it's saying 87 is correct. Well done. Okay, so we've addressed all of the minimum completion tasks for this app, and we've looked at different concepts here, including storyboard objects, outlets, IB action, conditional statements, random numbers, and string interpolation, which is essentially taking the value of a variable, in this case the submitted answer, and interpolating it into an additional string. Okay, so that is our second app complete, and good luck with this, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.